Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at something pretty profound, I think. The
Yeah.
idea of fear as like a barrier to
Yeah.
spiritual growth.
Interesting topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to help us, we're going to be looking at the work of Waxira,
Okay.
founder and Grand Master of the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood.
Wow.
And he draws these really interesting parallels with something called the Hidden Gospel of Thomas.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting about Waxira's work is how he kind of brings together these ancient teachings with a modern perspective.
Yeah.
And that's what I think makes this deep dive so interesting for everyone listening, because whether you consider yourself spiritual, quote unquote, or not,
Right.
understanding how fear can be used to block knowledge, well, that's something we all encounter in our lives
Yeah, for sure.
in so many different ways.
It's universal, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess
I
then.
mean, we see this pattern throughout history. Just think about the burning of the library at Alexandria.
Oh, wow. A blatant attempt to suppress knowledge
Yeah.
and maintain power, right? It's a
Oh.
pretty stark illustration of how fear can be weaponized.
Yeah. It's a powerful example for sure. And I think that brings us to Waxhira's central point,
Yeah.
which is that fear is a tool that's been used to manipulate and control people, specifically to hinder their spiritual exploration.
Yeah.
Like, it makes you wonder what keys are hidden in our modern world.
That's exactly the question that Waxhira wants us to think about.
Right.
And it's not just about religious knowledge either.
Right.
It's relevant to any field where information is controlled, where you have these dominant narratives and voices that dissent are silenced or marginalized, right?
Yeah.
Think about science, politics, history.
Yeah.
I mean, fear can limit access to information, and it can even control behavior in subtle ways, even within our own supposedly free societies.
Yeah, that's true. It's not always about like overt oppression, is it?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's much more insidious, like the fear of just being ostracized for having a different view,
Right.
or even asking a question that challenges the status quo.
Absolutely. Social pressure can be incredibly effective at limiting exploration.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where the Hidden Gospel of Thomas comes in.
Okay.
Waxhira cites this really striking passage
Okay.
where Jesus talks about scribes and Pharisees who've hidden the key of knowledge
Wow.
and prevented others from accessing it.
It definitely makes you think, is there a particular passage from this gospel that you find particularly like illustrative of this whole key of knowledge thing?
There's one that really stands out to me.
Okay.
It's verse 13, and it says, quote, "For every female who makes herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven," end quote.
Okay.
Now, this may seem a little cryptic on the surface,
Yeah.
but a lot of scholars see it as a metaphor for spiritual transformation.
So the idea is that to achieve a higher spiritual state, it requires this kind of inner alchemy, like
Yeah.
a transformation of consciousness.
Exactly. And in this context, the key might represent the knowledge or the understanding necessary for that transformation.
Okay.
But what this passage seems to imply is that the key has been hidden or obscured.
Okay, so who then might these scribes and Pharisees represent in our modern world?
Well, think about those who control the information, who dictate the narratives.
Okay.
It could be institutions,
Okay.
governments,
Yeah.
media outlets,
Right.
even social groups.
I see what you're saying. That kind of makes me think about, though, like our own individual responsibility in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, are we always victims of fear, or do we sometimes choose to stay in our comfort zones?
A great question.
Like seeking knowledge and
Mm.
asking difficult questions can be uncomfortable,
For sure.
even if no one is explicitly stopping us.
That's a really great point, and it actually leads us to another fascinating passage from the Hidden Gospel of Thomas.
Okay.
It's the parable of the dog and the manger.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
You know the one where the dog doesn't eat the hay,
Right.
but it prevents the oxen from eating it?
Yeah.
What a way to illustrate how fear can work, you're right.
Right. It's such a powerful image.
It perfectly illustrates that sometimes it's not about some malicious control from these outside forces.
Right?
Sometimes it's simply our own fear of the unknown
Yeah.
that prevents us from exploring new ideas or letting go of old beliefs, even if they no longer serve us.
So we can be our own dog in the manger sometimes,
Exactly.
clinging to what's familiar,
Yeah.
even if it's no longer really nourishing us,
Yeah,
just because the unknown feels too risky.
that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this fear, this clinging to these old patterns, is what Waxhira sees as this major obstacle to spiritual growth.
It's interesting because when I was prepping for this deep dive, I was a bit skeptical, I have to admit.
Yeah,
Spirituality always felt like kind of a vague concept to me.
sure.
But the way that Waxira defines spirituality makes it feel much more relatable.
You're right. His definition is very inclusive.
Yeah.
He sees it as an inherent part of every individual,
Yeah.
this drive to connect with something larger than oneself.
So it's not necessarily about organized religion, then. Exactly. Spirituality, as Waxira describes it, can manifest in so many different ways.
Okay.
It could be through art, through nature, through human connection,
Yeah.
through a quest for knowledge.
Yeah.
It's about that innate human need for meaning and purpose that goes beyond any specific dogma or belief system.
So it's something that's already inside of us, this desire for something more.
I think so.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But if this desire for meaning is already there, how do we move beyond the fear that's kind of preventing its full expression?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think our listener is wondering the same thing.
Yeah, and Waxira offers some really thought-provoking insights on how to do that.
Well, let's dive into those in part 2. This is getting really interesting.
So Waxira suggests this multifaceted approach to kind of overcoming the fear
Okay.
that limits spiritual growth.
Okay.
And he really emphasizes the importance of introspection,
Okay.
critical thinking, and just a willingness to embrace the unknown.
Okay, so let's break those down.
Like, where do we even begin? What's the first step to kind of dismantling these internal barriers?
Well, the first step, according to Waxira, is to recognize and acknowledge our fears.
Okay.
We need to shine a light on them, understand their nature and where they come from.
So instead of just pushing those fears away or pretending they don't exist, we kind of face them head on.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what am I really afraid of?
Okay.
Is this fear based on like a real tangible threat?
Right.
Or is it an echo of like limiting beliefs?
Yeah.
Beliefs that we've inherited from our families, our cultures,
Right.
or even past experiences.
Yeah. That reminds me of when I was younger and I was terrified of speaking up in class.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't that I was afraid of like being ridiculed or anything, but I had this deep-seated belief that my opinions just weren't valuable enough to share.
Wow.
And it took me a long time to recognize that that belief was actually holding me back.
That's such a relatable experience.
Yeah.
We often carry these kind of invisible scripts that limit our potential.
And once we identify those fears and see where they come from,
Yeah.
then we can start to question them.
So step 1 is identify the fear. Step 2 is question it.
Precisely.
Right.
Don't accept things blindly, especially information that's presented as absolute truth.
Right.
Develop that healthy skepticism, that critical eye.
So-
Ask yourself, why am I afraid of this? Is there any evidence to support this fear?
And this is where things get really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because questioning our fears might lead us to challenge like long-held beliefs,
For sure.
even beliefs that have given us comfort or security.
Absolutely. And that can be really daunting. Letting go of those cherished beliefs.
Right.
It can feel like a threat to who we are.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to just stay in our comfort zones,
Yeah.
even if they're no longer serving us.
It's like choosing the familiar discomfort over the potential discomfort of the unknown.
That's such a great way to put it.
Yeah.
But here's where Waxira brings in this powerful concept.
He says that actively seeking out diverse perspectives and information is crucial to overcoming fear.
So instead of retreating into our echo chambers, where we only encounter information that reinforces what we already believe, we need to actively seek out viewpoints that challenge us.
Exactly. Expose yourself to different ideas, different cultures, different ways of seeing the world.
Yeah.
It's not about agreeing with everything you encounter,
Right.
but it's about expanding your understanding and
Yeah.
refining your own thinking.
That makes total sense. But that can be hard, can it?
It is.
Especially today where we're constantly bombarded with information.
It's overwhelming.
It's so easy to get caught in these filter bubbles and echo chambers.
It's a challenge, but it's an essential one.
Yeah.
And it requires us to be mindful of the information that we consume
Yeah.
and the sources that we trust.
Hmm.
It's about cultivating discernment.
Yeah. I found that one helpful practice is to consciously seek out sources that challenge my assumptions.
Yeah.
Even if they make me uncomfortable. It's like exercising that muscle of open-mindedness and critical thinking.
That's such a valuable practice.
Yeah.
And it leads us to Waxhira's 4th step,
Okay.
which is being willing to actually challenge our own assumptions.
So it's not just about seeking out new information, but it's about being open to changing our minds based on what we learn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the possibility that we might be wrong, that our understanding might be incomplete.
Yeah.
And that can be a really scary thing for people.
I think a lot of people resist changing their minds because they associate it with weakness or a lack of conviction.
You're right. There's a certain vulnerability
Yeah.
in admitting we don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
But I think true strength comes from being open to growth and evolution.
It's almost like we need to cultivate a sense of intellectual humility,
Yeah,
just a recognition that we're all works in progress and there's always more to learn.
beautifully put.
Mm.
And Waxira believes that technology actually plays a really vital role in this whole process of overcoming fear and fostering spiritual growth.
Okay, so let's talk about technology.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, myself included, kind of have this love-hate relationship with technology.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it's given us like unprecedented access to information, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it can be so distracting and overwhelming.
Absolutely.
It's like it can both liberate us and imprison us at the same time.
You've hit on a key tension there.
Yeah.
Technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
So how does Waxira see technology as like a positive force for spiritual growth?
He believes that technology, specifically the internet, has the potential to break down traditional barriers to knowledge
Okay.
and provide more people with access to spiritual teachings and diverse viewpoints.
That makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
I can access ancient texts, lectures, teachings from all over the world with just a few clicks.
It's amazing, isn't it?
That would have been unimaginable a few decades ago.
Yeah, and it allows for like a much more individualized approach to spiritual exploration.
Yeah.
People can curate their own learning journey,
Yeah.
connecting with ideas and communities that resonate with them.
It's like we have this vast library of spiritual knowledge at our fingertips,
We do.
but there's also a lot of noise out there, right?
Yeah,
Misinformation, conspiracy theories, and all sorts of distractions.
you're absolutely right. It's crucial to be discerning,
Yeah.
and that's why those steps we discussed earlier are so important.
Yeah.
Questioning everything, seeking out diverse perspectives, being willing to challenge our own assumptions.
So it's not just about passively consuming information, but actively engaging with it.
Exactly.
Critically evaluating it and using it to deepen our understanding.
Precisely. And technology can be a powerful tool for that.
Yeah.
It allows us to connect with people from all over the world,
Yeah.
engage in dialogue, share ideas, and learn from each other.
And this is where the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood comes in, right?
Yes.
They're using technology to make spiritual knowledge more accessible,
Yeah.
to foster a sense of community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while this specific organization might not resonate with everyone,
Right.
it really highlights a larger trend that we're seeing.
Okay.
There's a growing number of individuals and groups who are dedicated to making spiritual knowledge more accessible,
Yeah.
breaking down those barriers that have traditionally excluded people.
That's really encouraging to hear. It's almost like there's this democratization of spirituality happening.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to see how this is unfolding.
So we've talked about fear as this barrier to spiritual growth.
Yeah.
And we've explored some ways to kind of overcome those barriers.
Right.
But I'm curious, what role does the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood see for itself in this larger movement? Like, what makes their approach unique?
Well, one thing that sets them apart is their focus on ancient wisdom traditions,
Yep.
particularly those of Atlantis.
Atlantis, like
Yeah.
the lost city.
Yes. They believe that the Atlanteans had this advanced spiritual knowledge and technology that were lost when the civilization sank beneath the waves.
Wow, that's fascinating. But how do they access this lost knowledge?
They claim to receive teachings and guidance through channeling,
Okay,
meditation, and other esoteric practices.
interesting.
They also place a strong emphasis on personal experience and intuitive understanding.
So it's not just about studying ancient texts, but about cultivating a direct connection to this ancient wisdom.
Exactly. And they believe that this knowledge is especially relevant now,
Okay.
as we're facing these unprecedented challenges and going through this profound global transformation.
So they're drawing on ancient wisdom to address modern-day issues.
Yeah.
I can see how that might appeal to people who are looking for guidance and meaning
Absolutely.
in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain.
Yeah. And they really emphasize the importance of community and shared purpose.
Okay.
They believe that by coming together and supporting one another, we can overcome fear and create a more harmonious and enlightened world.
So they're not just about individual spiritual growth, but about collective transformation, too.
Exactly. They see the two as interconnected.
Okay.
As individuals awaken to their true potential.
Yeah,
They contribute to the awakening of humanity as a whole.
that's a beautiful vision. But I'm wondering, what are some concrete ways that the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood actually helps individuals on their spiritual journeys?
They offer a variety of resources and programs,
Okay.
including online courses, workshops, retreats, and community gatherings.
Okay.
They also provide guidance and mentorship to people who are trying to deepen their spiritual practice.
So it sounds like they're creating a space for people to explore these ideas and practices in like a supportive and nurturing environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they emphasize the importance of personal empowerment and self-discovery.
Hmm.
They believe that each individual has the potential to tap into their own inner wisdom and to create a life of purpose and fulfillment.
That's inspiring. It's a reminder that we all have the power to shape our own destinies and to contribute to a more positive future.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious, you mentioned that they place a strong emphasis on personal experience.
Yes.
Do they have any specific practices or rituals that they recommend?
One of their core practices is meditation.
Okay.
They believe that meditation is essential for quieting the mind, connecting with our inner selves, and accessing those higher states of consciousness.
Meditation is something I've always been curious about, but I've struggled to establish a consistent practice.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for someone like me who's just starting out?
I think the most important thing is to find a style of meditation that really works for you.
Okay.
There's so many different approaches.
Yeah.
So it's really about experimenting and finding what resonates.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about channeling?
Yeah.
You mentioned that they receive teachings through channeling.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit more about what that entails?
Channeling is a process of connecting with non-physical beings or energies to receive information, guidance, or inspiration.
So it's like turning into a different frequency,
Yeah.
accessing a realm of knowledge that's beyond our everyday perception.
Exactly. And the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood believes that channeling can be a powerful tool for spiritual growth.
Okay.
Providing those insights and perspectives that we might not be able to access just through our own limited human understanding.
This is also fascinating.
It is.
It's really pushing the boundaries of what I thought I knew about spirituality.
Yeah.
I'm sure our listeners feeling the same way.
I hope so. It's always exciting to explore new ideas and expand our horizons.
Well, I'm eager to continue this exploration in part 3 of our deep dive.
Yes.
We've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
but I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
There's definitely much more to uncover.
So we've been on this journey exploring Waxhira's ideas on fear and spiritual growth.
It's quite a journey.
And it's amazing how he brings together ancient wisdom
Right.
from texts like the Hidden Gospel of Thomas with this like modern perspective on technology. And organizations like the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood.
It is a unique blend.
It really is. And he challenges us to look at fear not just as like this primal emotion,
Right.
but as a force that can be used to control and manipulate people both personally and on like a societal level.
Yeah. And those parables from the Hidden Gospel of Thomas really bring that point home.
They do. The image of that dog in the manger,
Right.
preventing others from having nourishment even though it doesn't even want it for itself.
Powerful imagery.
Such a powerful metaphor for how fear works both within us and in the world around us.
The Key of Knowledge passage is also really compelling.
Yeah.
It suggests that there's this hidden wisdom, this potential for spiritual transformation
Right.
that has been obscured, maybe intentionally even.
Right.
And it makes you wonder what keys we might be missing out on in our own lives because of fear or limiting beliefs.
And it's not just about external forces keeping us in the dark, is it?
No, it's not.
We can be our own jailers sometimes.
Oh,
clinging to comfortable but like outdated beliefs.
yeah.
Just out of fear of the unknown.
Because it's safe.
Yeah. It's like we're choosing to stay in this dimly lit room when there's this whole universe of light outside.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And Waxira offers us this way out of that dimly lit room.
He does.
He encourages us to cultivate curiosity,
Yeah.
to question everything,
Yeah.
and to actively seek out those diverse perspectives.
Right.
And he also reminds us that spirituality isn't just about organized religion.
No.
It's that innate human longing for meaning and connection,
Absolutely.
that drive to understand like our place in the grand scheme of things. And it can manifest in so many ways.
It can.
Through art, nature, human connection.
Right.
It's about tapping into something larger than ourselves.
Exactly.
And he sees technology as this powerful tool for facilitating that connection.
Yeah.
Because it gives us access to this wealth of information and different perspectives that just weren't available before. But as we discussed earlier, technology can be a double-edged sword.
It can.
It can create these echo chambers and even fuel misinformation if we're not careful.
That's why it's so important to develop discernment,
Right.
to build those critical thinking skills, and to be really mindful of the sources that we trust.
Yeah.
It's not about just blindly accepting everything that we see online.
Right.
It's about engaging with information
Uh-huh.
in a thoughtful and critical way.
So we need to be like active participants in our own learning journeys,
Yes,
not just passive consumers of whatever pops up on our screen.
exactly. And that's where organizations like the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood
Yeah.
can play a really important role.
Right.
They offer guidance and resources and a sense of community for those people who are trying to explore these ideas in a more structured and supportive way.
And while their focus on Atlantis and channeling might not resonate with everyone,
Sure.
their core message of overcoming fear and like embracing our spiritual potential, I think speaks to something that everyone wants.
It's a universal longing.
It really is. So what is the antidote to fear then?
Yeah.
If fear is the barrier,
Right.
what's the key that unlocks that door to spiritual growth?
Waxhira doesn't say it explicitly,
Yeah.
but from reading his work, it seems to me that love and compassion are really essential parts of that key.
Love and compassion.
Yeah.
That's interesting. How do you see those qualities as like antidotes to fear?
Well, fear often comes from a sense of separation,
Right.
this belief that we're all alone in facing the challenges of life.
Yeah.
But love and compassion connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
Okay.
They create that feeling of belonging and interconnectedness.
So by cultivating love and compassion, we're essentially expanding our circle of concern beyond just our own needs and fears.
Exactly, and that expansion can be incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
It allows us to see the world through this wider lens,
Right.
to really appreciate the beauty and the interconnectedness of all things.
It's like we're shifting from a mindset of scarcity and fear to a mindset of abundance and possibility.
It is, and I think that shift in perspective is essential for spiritual growth.
Yeah.
You know, when we approach the world with love and compassion,
Yeah.
we're much more open to new experiences,
Yeah.
more willing to step outside of our comfort zones, and more likely to see that divine spark in ourselves and in others.
That's a powerful thought to leave our listeners with.
It is.
If fear is a barrier to spiritual growth,
Yeah.
maybe love and compassion are the keys that unlock those hidden doors of knowledge and understanding.
I think so. I encourage you to think about that. What role do love and compassion play in your own life?
Yeah.
How can you cultivate those qualities more in how you interact with yourself, with others, and with the world around you?
And on that note, we'll leave you to continue your own deep dive into these questions.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those hearts and minds open.
There's a whole universe of wonder out there waiting to be discovered.